everyone. Welcome to Awkward Conversations. We are Seth and Saundra Den, and we come to you with these videos in an effort to bring up topics that are challenging, that are awkward, that are difficult, things that maybe we're not talking about that we need to be talking about. And these might be things that are difficult between us. So you might see some fiery stuff or awkward socially, culturally, and so forth. And so today we want to talk about transitions in life. We are old enough, I'm just going to say it. We've seen a few transitions. And understand, if you watch this routinely, you know this, but we don't plan these out. We choose a topic, we do our individual planning, and then we come together and we see what fireworks happen. So it's fun, but transitions in life are tricky. And one of the things that I thought of, and then I'll let you run with this, or run with whatever you want to run with. But one of the things I realized in my preparations is some of these transitions we choose and some we don't. Some are just dealt to us. And so when I started doing my work, I went, oh, wow. That's where it's interesting, because she has chosen things that were hard for me. I've chosen things that were hard for her. But you know what? We've also been dealt things that we had to navigate. We didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
And I think that is true for all of us. So transitions in life. I don't know. Do you have a starting point?
Yeah.
You want to jump in?
It's interesting to me because we say when we get married, for better, for worse, richer and poorer, sickness, health, whatever. We say those things, and they're true, and we do hold to that. Mm-hmm. But I think it's funny because as kids, you're told, as kids, older kids, high school, college age, you're told to find somebody who is your partner, who you love, and and find the one. And what's interesting is the one is going to go ahead and grow and change, and things are going to happen. And they should.
They should. We should grow and change, right?
And so that is interesting because even though you're choosing the right one now, are you going to end up with the right one? Well, yeah, because you've made a vow, right? Like you're stuck with them in a sense. But there's that reality that they are going to change. And that's something that nobody really talks about. Nobody really prepares you for.
Yeah.
Is those transition times, whether it's in marriage or things that are dealt to you in the way that you live. Maybe you go from living in a really wealthy neighborhood to living in a tiny little apartment. Financial things happen, whatever.
Right.
Or, all of a sudden your person is physically disabled, and then that transition. And so you think about all those transitions, but nobody really talks about the transitions that happen of people changing.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And I think, I don't know. Honestly, part of me is I don't know what to, even when I do think about that and think to tell people, the person you start with is not going to be the person you end up with. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I don't even know what to say to that, except that you better be dang committed to your vows. If you want your marriage to last forever, you better be committed to your vows. And you better be no matter what, And we're not talking, when I say that, I'm not talking about abuse. If somebody is being abused physically, sexually, mentally, get out. But
you're talking about just life
normal,
growth.
Healthy people.
Yeah.
When your person changes, you of course you have permission to leave. But is that what you want to do when you've made vows to yourself and to that person?
Yeah.
And
you have permission in that nobody's going to stop you, but the reality is what you're mentioning here is not bad. We want to grow and change. I think if a life is stagnant, that's not how it's meant to be. And we really should talk about negative and positive examples of this, but I'll bring up one positive, and then let's bring up some negatives too, because we all face them.
Yeah, absolutely.
But one positive one that I have watched with other couples too, that Saundra and I have experienced, is spiritual growth. We have both been interested in spiritual growth.
Yeah.
And for the most part, I mean, there's variations here, but for the most part, we've both been intentional. And therefore, when there's been a massive growth in one of us, there was typically massive growth in the other one, at least in a good, reasonable time frame as the other. And so we kind of navigated some of that together. And that's a beautiful thing. But I mean, even that can be clumsy.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I've watched couples that didn't happen. One of them really grew spiritually or in other ways, and the other one didn't. And boy, it does create a chasm, right?
Yeah.
And we've had some of those things that have created a chasm, it's just not in that scenario, but we've had other things that have created a chasm between us. And that's when you have to decide, am I really going to follow? The Word of God gives us very clear directions and guidance. And so I'm asked to let her grow and let her be her. And some of that I don't understand. And I'm asked to, I think, biblically, I'm asked to navigate that with her, because it's not abuse. It's not, it's not that, it's not something that would be ended just because I don't like some things that you have chosen to do. And you have chosen to do some things that I didn't like. But that's not a reason then to say, well, yes, so have I. Yes, that is absolutely, I didn't mean that. Of course, that's true. But so I think these transitions are important to acknowledge and recognize.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I think, how do you navigate those times? How do you determine if those things are worth leaving? So do you want to, let's just quickly talk about some of ours.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's good for them to hear these things. Yeah.
So, I made a massive shift when our daughter was around 10, I believe. And it was just because I started, the massive shift was due to a book that I read, Gospel of Peace by Jim Richards. So that book just gave me so much freedom that I always wanted, but I didn't know I could have. And then secondarily, there was a person in my life, Brooke, who she and I were really close friends. And she also helped me just push boundaries that I'd never pushed and do things that I had never done or never thought that I could do, but always wanted to do. And so I definitely, I changed big time in that time frame. And so I think that's one that you had to navigate and probably felt like you had to navigate alone. You didn't have to navigate it alone, but you felt like you did. And so you did a lot of that on your own, I feel like. And I wish, one of the things that I wish is that you had come to me and we had been able to have more discussion.
Right.
But because of the first 15 years of our marriage, the way things were, I didn't feel like you cared. I didn't feel like I was safe to talk about those hard things with you because I felt like you were absent and you were so distant. And so even then, if you had come to me and started talking about those things, I think I would have been like, no, I'm not safe to tell you the things I think and the things I feel. Yeah. And so I recognize that you felt like you had to navigate that on your own. And I, to this day, and I told him in that time frame because I knew I was changing. And I told him, if you want to go find somebody else, go find somebody else. I didn't want that, but if that's what you need to do, go do that. Because I knew I was making massive changes. And I knew I was no longer the person he chose to marry. And that sucks. I wasn't willing to stay the person I was because the ways that I was changing was always things that I wanted, things that were in my heart that I wanted to do and be. But so there was no way I was just going to maintain that person that I was in order to be pleasing to everybody else. And so I definitely was going to make that shift. So I had told him if he needs to find somebody else because I'm not the person you married now. Like, it sucked. It sucked for me. It sucked for him. Like, who wants that? It's that is a hard thing to experience. And it's hard on both ends. Even though I was feeling more free and feeling more life, it was still hard for me.
Sure.
Because I knew I was becoming somebody that maybe you didn't want.
Yeah. And here I am on the other side of this, knowing things are changing, but having no idea how. And I in this piece of the story, I have to bring us forward just a tiny bit, and then I'll bring us right back. But, she said I was closed off and distant. Honestly, that is a true statement, but I wasn't just closed off and distant to you. I was closed off and distant to myself. I had no bandwidth to even understand, how it was. How would I approach you with questions? And, so to bring us forward a little bit, there's been, sorry.
It's good. Keep going.
There's been tons of, now, first, let me say this. I also read The Gospel of Peace and was going through massive change myself. It was in this time period that I heard it said that God loves me just because I'm me. That may do nothing for you, rocked my world. I mean, for me, I was in this same time frame beginning to embrace this concept that, you mean God, he doesn't love me because of what I do, because of what I accomplish, how good I am, or not love me because of how bad I am? I mean, I'm going through this massive growth journey. She's changing, wanting me to ask questions and get in there with her. I had no room for it. And so to bring us forward just a little bit further, which I mentioned here a minute ago, was that in the last, 10-ish years, I have begun to understand much more who I am and how I function, what my motivations are, and how to, because my goodness, what you were just describing goes back a long ways.
Yeah.
And so bring us forward a fair bit from that. I am just now beginning to understand, how do I determine, how am I? She'll ask me, how do you feel about that? And seriously, I will say to her, can I have a day or two? And I'll have to go find out how I feel about that. And she's begun, I think, to understand that. But I had none of that back then.
Yeah.
And so she was craving things, and they would have been really good things if I could have offered them to her, but I didn't have it. So here we are in a relationship, navigating multiple facets of change and growth. And I wish I had then what I have now. Because everything you just unpacked would have looked different.
Yeah.
But I didn't have it.
And this
you
is
didn't
exactly
have it.
right. This is exactly what transitional times are about. Like a lot of times, like you're stuck in a moment to do what you can do, what you have to do with.
Yeah.
Like you only have so much that you can do. If another massive transition happened, where something terrible happened or even something amazing happened,
right?
Would we have what we need to have what it takes?
Right.
I mean, we do, because we've got the Spirit of God on the inside of us, right? But it is because of the Spirit of God on the inside of us that we are where we are. And I just think this is why Christianity, this is why this is so valuable, because if we didn't have the Spirit of God on the inside of us through the transitional times that we've had, we wouldn't be together.
No.
And not only that, honestly, I don't think I would be alive. So I just think there
is something massive there.
It's massive.
Yes.
That this is why we preach what we preach. Like, if you are without the Spirit of God on the inside of you, you are, in many ways, you're never going to have fully what you need. You're always going to be in lack, and you're never going to be able to really experience the fullness of life. And that is why I love God. And it's why we trust in Him.
Absolutely.
But nonetheless, that was one transition where neither one of us felt like we had what we needed. And I mean, we did because we made it through. Did we make it through beautifully?
No.
No, it was hard.
But yeah.
But we did.
We did. Yes. And still are to some degree.
Yeah.
I mean,
still, yeah.
It's okay to embrace that. Sometimes these
some
things
of that is
flavor you and
still cry
continue
about some
to
of it.
unpack. And
Yeah. And then we've had the transition twice where we've lost somebody very, very close to us.
Yeah.
Apart from our family.
Yes.
This is what you do. I tell everybody, just smile when you feel like crying, because then you can keep talking and it's fine.
Yeah. We've both lost best friends.
We've both lost best friends. And that has been a challenge. That has been also, those moments that you're just dealt this thing. You're not choosing
you
it.
don't have a choice.
Whereas I was choosing
right.
to change, right? I was choosing to experience freedom and let myself be free in that way. Whereas when my friend passed, when his friend, our friends passed.
Our friends too,
like that was just dealt to us, right? And to this day, that's still very
obviously still very tender.
Yeah. And
it's been years.
Yeah.
Your best friend died a lot longer ago, where mine's
more recent.
But
So anyway, it's lovely having an awkward conversation where we're both crying. But I just think those transitional times in life, like you have to be able to lean into the Spirit of God on the inside of you. You have to be able to lean on one another as best you can, as much as you can with what the other person can and has to offer.
Yeah.
But I think this is part of, it's part of life. Everybody has their story.
Everybody gets it.
Everybody has those transitions in their lives, those defining moments, those pinpoints where you go, my life was impacted,
Yeah.
And so I think the value of that is legitimately being able to have God in your life.
Absolutely.
And lean into Him.
There's a tremendous emptiness that is there if you don't have that. Right? Because I think about, some of we've mentioned, and there's more things that we could mention that I don't know that we'll get to just for time's sake. There's been other transitional things, but I think I look to these things, and some of them are absolutely beautiful growth moments and so forth. That doesn't mean they were easy.
Right.
Right? I mean, there's several things that we won't have time to unpack today that have been beautiful growth moments for me that I've actually said to her, I wish I hadn't gone through that. I don't mean that. I'm really glad, but it's painful.
Yeah.
And you growing can hurt.
Yeah.
But it's so worth it. And I think to your point that having the Spirit of God in us and being willing to learn and grow and mature is just huge.
Yeah.
But a lot of people don't want to do it because it can be really painful. Even those things you choose, certainly some of the things you don't choose can be very, like people dying. That's painful.
Yeah.
Right? But even growth, it causes you to stretch. And so many times, it leaves you not knowing all the answers, right? And I think that's harder for some than others. Like if you're a person that wants to have all the answers, wow. I mean, you need to be okay at times with not having the answers. Yeah. There were times, in our transition of going back, not the friends passing, but you choosing that freedom and so forth. There were so many times I'm like, I don't understand, but I want, and I probably never voiced this with her well, but I wanted the transition. I wanted to let it happen. I was not like trying to stop her from growing. I saw good in it, but I didn't understand it and didn't know what to do with it. So, and I needed to be okay with that at times. It's just like grief, from a friend dying. There's times when you just have to just sit in it, right? Yeah. And not have the answers, not have the solutions. Now, there's times we do.
Yeah.
There's those moments also.
Yeah.
But I just think transitions, they sidetrack people And they don't need to.
Yeah.
They oftentimes are clumsy and painful and difficult and challenging and yet beautiful and priceless. And they're those things that are growth that we look back and we're like, wow, I'm so glad I'm not who I was, but I am now who I am. And I had to go through transition to get there.
Yeah.
So it's good. But man, if you have to have all the answers, if you can't take those moments to just sit in it and trust the Spirit of God in you. See, I heard the Spirit of God in me. I didn't understand it, but I heard the Spirit of God in me at times, both through losing good friends and also in the moment that she was describing of really changing. I heard the Spirit of God in me say, just rest. I know you don't get it. I know you're uncomfortable. I know you don't understand, but I do. That's what I'd hear the Spirit of God say.
Yeah.
Is don't worry. It's okay. Just keep navigating. Keep walking. Let me help you with the pain. Let me help you with ideas. Let me help you grow. Does that make sense?
I think, and I think it's interesting because as we're talking through this, we didn't intend for this message to be one about, trusting God, coming to Jesus, etc. That's not, but it kind of feels like it is that kind of message. Like life is going to hand you stuff. Some things you're going to choose. Yeah. And you're going to regret some of those things. And some things you're going to choose and you're going to be so glad you chose them. Yeah. But they are going to bring growth. But I think understanding that no matter what, your life has those pinpoint moments in your story. And the best way to get through those moments, the healthiest way, the only way, like for a lot of people who decide they're not going to continue to live, right? They make choices. We've experienced that too, where we've had people just decide they're done and they take care of it, take themselves out. Like, no. And I think what I want to say is the best way to get through life is learning to lean into God, trusting God, understanding that He is your life and He is your help in every situation. Yeah. And you just don't get through, you don't get through life unscathed, right? No,
you don't.
And even as a Christian, you don't get through life unscathed. Right. You still experience that stuff. Yeah. But it is the ability to lean into the Spirit of God. It is the ability to trust Him that allows you to rest in those transitional moments, that allows you to go, this is okay. Yeah. Like, I'm in this place and it's okay because God is here with me. He is faithful. He loves me. And He's going to take care of it. Yeah. And a lot of things, there's things we just don't understand. Absolutely. And being able to live in the mystery and just go, this is one of those things that I'm like, okay. Yeah. Like, I don't understand it. But what I do know is that I am loved and I am cared for. And Psalm 23 is the go-to. So the Lord is my shepherd. Yes. I shall not want. Right. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. Right. Fear no evil, for you are with me. It's not a promise that none of that is there. It's a promise that it's going to be there, and He is with us. Right there with us. Yeah. So on that note, I just want to say, if you don't know God, if you don't have a relationship with Him, I want to invite you to reach out. We would love to help you learn how to do that, connect with that as best as we can. And even if that's only just online, whatever, we can, we can talk online. We can do those kinds of things to help talk you through it, whatever. If you have questions that you're just like, I just don't get this, whatever, like reach out. We'd love to make that connection, to make your connection with God, right? Yeah. We'll network you. Yeah. And I would say this too, as we close out this video, is this has been maybe a little weighty, and maybe you're thinking of some of your own transitional things. It's worth it. Yeah. It's worth it. I think, and this is what I want to encourage you with, and you say if you think this is true or not, because you may or may not agree, but
the last few years, I don't know, what the last 3 or 4 years have been another time of massive transition for us. And in some ways, the most painful for me. And she has done a beautiful job helping me navigate some of that. And then there's the stuff we've navigated together. And I feel like while it's still been challenging and difficult and painful to transition yet again in some ways, I feel like we've done a better job with this. There's things I personally didn't do well with. And so, you learn and grow constantly. But I do think growth adds to growth, adds to growth, adds to growth, right? And there's always more to learn, but it's so very, very worth it.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So even though this has been weighty, there's good stuff in here. We hope that you are encouraged,
Yeah.
understanding that you can rest.
Absolutely.
You can trust God. You can lean into the mystery, and you can grow. And we get stronger. We get better.
We do.
Right?
We do.
So, bless you. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you for watching, and thank you for liking and subscribing. This would be pretty pointless if you weren't here.
Ring the bell.